Too.
Okay, so we are down to town.
I went to school.
Withdrawal study reports. So we have the majority report up. Is there anyone from the majority here for Canterbury?
Yeah, I've had to do the same.
Hey there, welcome. So if you can introduce yourselves. Now, we have all read your report and the minority report. So I don't think there's a need to go over in detail. But if there's anything you'd like to add to supplement what's in the report, we'd be willing to hear that. If you could just introduce yourselves for the record.
I'm Senator Dole.
We're with the minority. My name is Randy
Oh.
Johnson.
Okay.
Calvin Todd, the majority.
Okay. So, Mr. Todd, I think we'll just do you first. Is there anything that, again, without reading the, the thing, just that you think we should know for context or for clarity here about this?
I just,
Yeah, you can make a presentation.
no, it's not a presentation, it's just more of a commentary. It's
Sure.
the overall report. This has been a 2-year process for the
Right.
town.
Yeah.
We tried to navigate it the best way we possibly could within the constraints of the RSA. So the information in the report is our best educated guess at what we think numbers could be. It could be worse, it could be better.
Right.
So we just want to clarify that none of this stuff could be factual to the extent that the numbers are as accurate as they could be. So we did our best to communicate with the other districts, other towns to achieve the best numbers. But there is a void in that, and I think part of that is the way that the process is laid out. So we did the best we could with the way the process was established, but we think it could have been improved, and we could have maybe potentially gotten better results with both majority and minority, if that makes sense. It's really difficult in a 2-town agreement
Right.
district. So
No, it makes total sense. Can you give us maybe an example or two of like the process getting in the way of finding more information that you would like to have?
well, for instance, for us to go out and reach out to other school districts, we reached out to a handful to get I don't want to call it a true number, but to get a tuition cost or an administration cost. It's very difficult to negotiate that or to have conversations about it when you've only got 2 towns affected. We only have a small portion of the students in the district. There's a lot of constraints to our situation that made it hard to get accurate numbers. I mean, if you look in the report, I call it the doom and gloom number. It could be upwards of $7 million to start a new district. For a
Right.
town our size,
A lot.
that's a lot of money when our assessed value is only in about the 360 million range.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult for us to get numbers in a window that were palatable or acceptable to fully support, if that makes sense. It's hard to stand behind a number when you're getting an $8,000 range depending on the school district you're talking to,
Right.
and not being able to negotiate or calculate administrative costs, food costs, teacher contracts. It's really tough.
Sure.
And I know in supporting the withdrawal motion, we tried to use that as an avenue to garner more information, with the idea that if you show intent, maybe we could get a finite number that could better support it for the town. So that was a lot of the drive in trying to sort of figure these finite numbers out, because to be honest, they're really hard to palate at the numbers they are now, and especially in a small town. It's a tight-knit community, but you're also trying to represent everybody who wants options, who wants choice, but who also wants to stay the same. At the end of the day, you're not going to make everybody happy, but you also don't want to financially sink a town. That's not fair to the taxpayers, and that's not what this committee was trying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we understand that you have, there's certain constraints on the amount of information you're able to get without doing a full, in-detail business plan, without hiring a consultant to do market studies, without being able to negotiate. Your situation, you probably are limited. But I guess the question to you is, given the range that you've laid out in the minority report, so, and you acknowledge that, you say, here's what we think are the costs we can determine, here is a range of costs that we can't determine, but we think is a ballpark. It's a pretty big ballpark, but it's there. I guess I would ask you, do you feel like the voters taking this would have enough information to make an informed decision? You know, knowing that there are risks, knowing that the numbers aren't 100% precise, you can't do this to the penny, and everybody would understand that. You know, but would they have enough just general knowledge to go, yeah, I feel like I can make a pretty good decision here on whether I should vote yea or nay?
I think truthfully, no. I think because the numbers are so vast from one end of the spectrum to another, I think a voter would have a hard time looking past that extremely high number.
Yeah.
You know, I know as a resident, it's very difficult to want to say, I would love my taxes to go up $4,000. I'm a carpenter by trade.
Yeah.
You know, I have 2 kids in the district. I've got a 1st grader and a 5th grader. I love our elementary school. You know, we have areas we can work everywhere to get it better, but I think the consensus of the town is we just want to improve, you know, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I don't know how many voters could get behind that number if it wasn't more finely tuned before a vote.
Just want to make a quick comment on this. So I think overall the report is good. I think as a voter I can make a decision on it, but we shouldn't assume that every voter is just voting on money.
Yeah.
Values matter too. Some people are willing to vote yes because they want choice and figure it out on the back end. Some people just vote about dollars. So, you know, I think what you did was a good faith effort to put some meat on the bones, and then you know, if this thing makes it to a vote, it's both parties' jobs to go out and inform voters of, you know, in good faith of what we know, what we don't know, and then let them choose. But I didn't read your section as being woefully lacking. It's the information you have as a small town trying to, you know, make a decision about whether or not to stay in a cooperative school district. And it's always a complicated decision. So money's just one aspect. I don't think that everybody's voting just based on dollars.
I think money plays we're a very small town. I mean, we have 2,400 people in the town. We have about 350 kids, give or take, in the school system. Our town's an older town. You know, I think money speaks more volumes and outweighs more. There's more weight in dollar signs, I think, than there is choice, if that's.
Yeah, I guess the question we're trying, it sounds like you're arguing against your own majority.
I'm not trying to argue against it. I fully support exploring, and I believe in choice.
Should we pass this so that you could go to a vote, I guess is the question. Do you think we should approve your plan so that it could go to a vote?
For the sake of closure, yes. For the sake of having the amount of information that we would need to look at it long term, I don't think it's there to vote on it wholeheartedly. I think having 6 months from the beginning of the report, from the start of the committee to the report, is not a long time to get a lot of the information. I think that if we could have narrowed it down to a more specific range, it would be easier to put towards a vote. But for the sake of closure, this has been worked on. People have put a lot of hours in this to better the community, you know? So yes, I support the notion of school choice and withdrawal, which is why I voted for it, for options, but I don't know if all the information, I could vote on it tomorrow with the information that we have. There would still need to be more work to sell it to the townspeople, to reassure them at the dollar signs. It's hard to sell a product when I can't project 5, 10, 15 years down the road what my schools will cost. You know, when you're looking at $7 million potential, we'll just say that because that's the report number, as a tax implication to a town whose tax base is about $5.5 million a year. You know what we raise? That's a lot of money. Now, for me to wholeheartedly make that decision, maybe I could make it if I knew 10 years down the road my taxes would be more flatlined because I'm on a tuition agreement somewhere else. But we don't have that information, so it's going to be very difficult to persuade people to do that. You know, the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people is that big number up front. There's panic in how do we pay for it long term? How do we pay for it right away? We don't have that information, and as a member of the majority report, I wish we could have more of that information so it would be a product that we could sell, if that makes sense.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that you do believe that the people who you represent want to make this change, but because you're lacking the information on the price tag, that it may block people who are otherwise willing to do so from moving forward with that type of a decision, that makes sense. one thing I may add to you is that may be the role of you to add that context to what you're saying when you go to quote sell it to the people we are talking to. Because the reality is, even in the current environment, you don't know what your tax increases on the current school is gonna be. Sometimes school costs go up all the time. Sometimes, in fact, most times, school costs go up. So what I would champion for you, I guess, in your pitch, is that school costs are gonna go up irregardless of the decision that we make today. It's just about the fact that we did not have the numbers to give you an accurate projection, but if you believe in school choice and you believe that you wanna have options for your children, then we have to make a good faith effort to get such information so that we can move on the course. Because what Rich is saying is you're almost talking down your own case right now. But I hear what you're trying to say, that the price tag is a burden to somebody hearing it for the first time without the information.
And it's also difficult to sell when you speak to certain schools and you get an $8,000 range. When
Sure.
you're talking 300 kids, $8,000 for 300 kids, that's a lot of money from top end to bottom.
Oh, I hear you.
You
I
know,
hear
so
exactly
it's-
what you're saying.
I don't want to be talking against it, but I'm trying to talk from the point that we did the best we could with what we have, but I couldn't wholeheartedly sell you this is the best option because
Because
I
you
don't have
the
all
information.
facts.
I hear what you're saying.
If you had 6 more months, would this be different?
I think the way the RSA is structured and our ability to communicate and negotiate, I don't think it might help in certain aspects, but it's very difficult to negotiate. What do we do with our teachers' contracts? What do we do for a school board? Are we gonna have a say in the new place we go? We don't know, and I don't know if 6 months would add to that, but it makes it very difficult to tell people, yeah, you can vote out tomorrow, and we're still gonna have a say, when you might not have a say.
Are you saying that the information you're seeking is not being given to you, or that what's being given to you is kind of bad information, or that you can't source the information without the other party giving it to you, or is it some connection of
It's a
those
connection of all of it.
Okay.
I think, we were fortunate, we were able to have a consultant this year, which helped bridge a very big gap that the year prior, having him allowed us to have conversations that we couldn't have as regular, citizens or members of the committee.
Sure.
His expertise was able to divulge information that we couldn't think of.
To even get here, where you are right now?
To get here where we
Yeah,
are now.
okay.
That was invaluable information we had. So I don't want to sound like I'm speaking against it. I just wish we could have garnered more information to be more to be more factual in the report rather than speculative.
I think your point is well heard. I don't think anybody here is hearing that. I think what you're saying we're all hearing. At least I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask, sort of aligned with Ann's question. You have some number of people who wanted this explored, you have a 2-year process. I mean, there's certainly some group of parents and citizens who would like to look at options for getting out. This report isn't what you had hoped for, you don't have enough information. Do you think putting this to the voters certainly would provide closure one way or the other? If it goes down in flames, you'll know. That'll say a lot. But does that then maybe cut off avenues in the future? Like, so putting up a 3/4 baked plan and people don't like it, cut off the possibility of working on something in the next couple of years to get a fully baked plan, because people would just say, well, we explored that, it's done, so there's no more options on the table.
That's tough because education, especially in our district, has always come up. It seems to come up every 15, 20 years. They want to reassess, they want to look at the relationship, and me as a person, I don't like 3/4 baked plans. I want the full plan. I want to put the best foot forward I can and present it to people with the most factual information. I would hate to see opportunities never seized because a 3/4 plan went through.
Right.
But in our opinion, minority and majority, we all did the best we could with the cards we were dealt. We put tireless hours into this, scoured as much information as we could, but we still know there's voids and gaps. And that's the tough part, is trying to convince somebody that this is the best thing when you don't have the actual tangible
Right.
numbers. It's the debate of, does this do more good more harm than good? Is it the tenure, is it better off in 10 years to have choice? I don't know. I know from the report, these are the numbers we had, and this is why we supported it. But it's difficult.
Anybody else have questions?
It's like Bill.
Can I ask one?
Yeah, yeah.
So it sort of goes along with Ann's question that, like, yes, right, this is the best information you can get right now, but should this pass, more information will have to be gathered. Like, what timeline would that look like? And is there a potential that in 12 months, if you continue the work, you would get to a place where this report would be more detailed and you would feel like it is the best possible plan to put forward to the voters?
I feel like under the timeline now, and this is my understanding, if this gets approved today, this will go on this year's warrant article. So that'll give us roughly 8.5 weeks to garner as much information as possible. What's gonna happen with our teachers, what's gonna happen for transportation, food, school costs, maintenance. That's a very short window of time to gather that sort of finite information on a volunteer committee. If you had potentially a year in the approval of this, with the intent of this could happen, maybe more districts would be apt to talk to us, maybe more offices would be prone to giving us a finite number, but an 8-week window is an extremely short period of time to get a much more definite direction of where the cost and where it would go, and then try to sell it to a town.
And to your understanding, oh, sorry, Phil, go ahead.
Well, Judy might be going to the same place, right? So, like, I guess for me, it's then what is the driving force between having this voted in front of us today, or in front of us for vote today, as opposed to saying, in 12 months, we could sit here and you would have a much more fleshed out plan to vote on, to go on that ballot, the next year's ballot.
Can I help?
Yeah, Randy.
So the RSAs dictate that we're sitting here. And I don't know if many of you were here last year, but you may remember me. I was here last year and I asked for a 1-year extension and that's not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where we are legally, and that would be my next question. So if this dies here today, what does that mean on your end? Is that the end of this and it has to start all over with a whole new committee and a whole new plan, or is there a way to move this forward under the statutory guidelines we have? Yep.
I joined the committee in July, so I was kind of late to the party, if you will. But given we have some shortcomings on predicting what the costs are, and when you go to the voters, you need to have some firm numbers, because they like to know what they're paying for and what they're getting for their dollar. But when you put the dollars aside, some of the things about this proposal, to me anyway, it doesn't make sense. Because we're talking about withdrawing from Shaker Regional and then going back to Shaker Regional as our anchor school. So all the students, that we would bus kids to Belmont, and then if they wanted to go to a choice school someplace else, the parents would have to take care of transporting to someplace else. And that in itself is a disruption to family budgets and schedules and everything else. That didn't make sense. And then the voters would not have a seat at the table to discuss any costs or anything that comes up, because the tuition agreements, they're negotiated from time to time, and they're gonna be renewed or not renewed, there's no guarantee. And the same thing with, when it gets to costs, the overhead costs that we have for administering the district, of going kind of hat in hand back to Belmont, the new school district, to ask them if they would subcontract to be our central office, if you will, our superintendent, our curriculum director, our food service, all that stuff, because Canterbury Elementary only has 125 kids, so that's the only school we would have left, and everyone else would be sent out. So to me, it didn't make sense, and it would be, I think, jeopardize the community. We don't want to lose Canterbury Elementary. It's a nice little school, but an important thing to a community is a good school system, because that attracts people, or people vote with their feet, and we have to be careful. And as I sit here, I was on the school board for 12 years in Shaker Regional, and I think there's an opportunity to provide some of the things that people were looking for as far as choice, advanced placement courses, other things, is to come before the school board and make a request. The answer is always no if you don't ask. You know, you need to come and tell them what you want, and, you know, there's some ways, creative ways to pay for things. I know when I was on the board, we always had what I would call a structural surplus in dollars. And we would put some of those funds into a trust fund for at the end of the year, we would put some of those surplus funds into a trust fund, and that's how we paid for maintenance and computers and things like that. Well, that's why we came up with some adjunct faculty funds or teacher incentive funds to find out what type of courses, advanced placement courses, whatever things you want in the district, and then you could pay for it out of those trust funds. And so the answer isn't no, you have to figure out what you want and then go for it. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why I'm on the minority committee, was because we thought some more things could be done within district. And when the committee voted, we didn't have all the information about costs and other things. They were just coming on the table when we voted, because we were under the crunch. We had to get the report in by November 1st. So we voted in the absence of sound information, and we voted 5-2. Two of the people on the committee weren't there. But when you look at the reports that we have, the majority report is 5, and the minority report is 4. So it's kind of a 50-50 split, you know, on how people feel. But in discussing this with some of the people in town, you know, they've heard about it, and there's kind of an uproar. You know, the people are very upset about what could be happening in town. And so I would hope that you would turn it down, and perhaps we can do some things better with our in-house district as things stand now. Thank you.
So I know we're kind of merging reports here.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, we're actually talking about like 225 students as a whole, 110 of them which are at the elementary school, so roughly 115 for middle and high school. 41% of parents that we averaged that we surveyed said that they would continue to choose Belmont. And then we said, okay, you know, how important is transportation to you? So then we're only going to transport to Belmont, and it was really the only option that we could come up with, because we didn't know where kids sat, what it would be if we wanted to go to different schools. So then your numbers are getting very smaller for kids that actually probably would be able to participate in school choice. I've been here 2 years. I understand it's not going away. I was the one that put in the minority report recommendation about open enrollment. I think that there's better ways to meet the needs of this. I think that education is going to get there. I just think we're not there yet, and I think that dissolving a school district to get there is just going to be detrimental to this community.
And what do you mean by open enrollment, just to clarify, in your situation?
So how I looked at it is, you know, making agreements with surrounding towns. You know, your students can come here, your community can go there. Like, do you have to confine your students to the town that they live in? Like, and I get it, education is changing, choice is changing. Like, it's not gonna go away. And I think that we have opportunity to look to the future and say, what can we do to help these school districts figure this out? Because I think that's the problem, is no one has figured it out yet.
Have you talked to other districts about, like neighboring districts, about that concept? I mean, the property tax issue is huge, right?
Right, it is, no.
And that's why we tuition.
We stuck to everything in the RSAs. We were very focused on it. We had talked about, you know, do we need to dissolve the district to do this? And, you know, one of the things is there's not a lot of guidance on this process, so we very much stuck to, it says you withdraw. So I didn't really even start thinking about this till after, but it was in looking at the Department of Ed website where it said it does not discourage communities from seeking open enrollment agreements, but it doesn't say how to do it.
Right.
And I think that, that might be something in the future that we could work towards. You had asked if, regardless of what happens here today, does it end here? And it doesn't end here. If you guys don't approve to this, I'm still gonna take my minority report request. I'm gonna go to the school board. I'm going to talk to them about changes, things that, people want to see. What can we do better? We came up with some great recommendations, ways to be a little more innovative and help meet the needs. And if it does get approved, I'm still gonna go talk to them about it, because I don't think this will pass the voters.
Any more questions?
Just open statement is that we're a local control state, and for me, it's about putting something in front of a voter in the community and deciding whether they want to accept it or not. And from this position, it sounds like you're saying that you're confident that they won't accept it, and if that's the case, I don't see the harm in putting it there to see if they will or won't. I think that not allowing voters to make a decision is actually not only counterintuitive to the democratic structure that we all love, but it's actually counterintuitive to the specific local control that New Hampshire talks about specifically. I'm not speaking for the other members here, but if you're confident that it's not supported, the easiest way to put a nail in that coffin is seeing it voted on, to me, philosophically.
To counter this, is part of the issue too, is the way the RSA is structured with the supermajorities. Belmont could feasibly vote Canterbury out and put Canterbury in a financial lurch. So with that context,
I'm not saying it
That's
doesn't come
also-
without risk, and those
Right.
risks are certainly up for both parties to elaborate to the people concerned. So none of this is without risk to either party. I'm just simply saying that philosophically, it feels very interesting to me to deny a community the opportunity to weigh in on their community. I know nothing about Canterbury, so to say they can't have access to make a decision seems very at odds with the New Hampshire tradition and the democratic tradition to me. I could be the only one that thinks that.
You're not.
Okay.
Phil?
Yeah, so like Brian, I tend to be in agreement that just put it to the voters. I do wonder if putting something that all parties are saying this is not as robust of an analysis as we would like to the voters, if we allow that, where does that put them, I suppose? It's probably more of a process question. Do they have to start again at Jump Street? I guess what's their best option if they wanted to get more information? Is the best option that we say, nope, hey, we're not gonna pass this, and they start again there, or that it goes to the voters and it starts again? Does that make sense, the question? It's a process question.
Can I ask you a process question?
Sure.
So if this does go to the town and the town says no, could they bring it back next year, or is there a time when it can't come up again?
That's my question. That's it, thank you.
I think that's more of a question for our attorney who knows that statute better.
You could bring a warrant forward the following year.
You can bring a new one, right? So you can always restart the process, and that's, nothing's gonna stop folks in town from saying again, all right, let's take another crack at it, we'll put another warrant on it. And that can just keep going on forever, which is what I was hearing from Mr. Todd about, just getting some closure here. If this does go on the ballot, I suppose there's a risk that it passes. But it also could be overwhelmingly shot down, at which point you sort of cut off that discussion potentially. But I don't know how many people it takes to get a warrant article up on the ballot in your area, but
25.
it could just keep coming up over and over again, and you get shot down over and over again.
You mentioned, they could come to the school board, and you mentioned you were gonna go to the school board, but I'm assuming some of these ideas were brought to the school board and wasn't heard, and did you just wake up on a Wednesday and decide I'm gonna try to withdraw from?
So I joined the school board, and I think it was my second meeting of my first year when I was appointed to chair of the withdrawal study committee. It is my understanding that nothing was brought to the school board prior to this, and that they were quite surprised that this had happened.
Nothing meaning no one had come and said, we're considering withdrawing, or nothing meaning people didn't come and voice the concerns that caused the withdrawal? Because those are two different things, both. So you had no idea of some of the issues that those who are trying to withdraw had with the district, nor did you know that they were planning withdrawal prior to the withdrawal coming.
So as a community member and a parent,
Mhm.
it's actually a strange conversation, like, as you go through elementary, a lot of people are like, where are you sending your kid for high school? Like, where, and I'd be like, well, what are you talking about? So I knew that, like, it's every couple of years, people like kind of discuss this, like, should this be? So I wasn't surprised, but it is my understanding that no one brought any concerns, any requests for choice to the school board ahead of time.
Okay.
You seem to have in your survey, and I don't know how representative a sample this is of the community in your survey.
It wasn't a lot.
But you have only 40% that say they want out. So even after all this talk, at least in your data, again, I don't know if it's a representative sample.
It was,
Most people seem to be happy with
It
wanting
was-
some change, but not really ready to.
so the first year that the warrant article was brought up, it was all about like cost. Like there was a very detailed presentation about, you know, are we getting the best value and like for what we're paying? And it was, could this be less because it's such a small population size of students we were talking about. And then the second year that the warrant article was brought up, it was, a lot of people spoke up that they did not support withdrawal, but they supported completing the study because they thought that we could use it to improve our current district. So it was a very interesting dynamic and the tone of the town changed. The first year, it was an extremely emotional reaction on all parts. It was a struggle last year to do this, but like I said, this year, people just talked about, can we use it to improve what we have?
So last, when you brought it up the first time, there was a consortium of your community that said the costs are too high, what do we do about this, are we getting the best value?
It
So-
was, could it be cost less because of the amount of students? So when you look
Okay.
at the costs that we currently pay, et cetera, that was what the question was.
And did that cost per student question open up a larger realm of questions like, what's the learning outcomes, are we getting the best for our dollar, can we have other alternative methods, or did it just kind of sit around at, it costs too much and why?
It sat around as like, what opportunities are we getting? Like, is this the best value? But to me, and I think you two were there too, a lot of it was about cost per student. That because the middle and high school was such a low number, that would we save money if we did this elsewhere and be able to provide more opportunities? Because Canterbury is unique where it sits. There's a lot of surrounding towns that are pretty bigger schools.
Sure.
You know,
Which is the
my-
conversation most people are having, trying to figure out if their education and tax dollars are actually giving them the outcomes that they want. Are they getting the most for rising education costs? As this gentleman discussed, I think we're in the middle of some of the highest inflationary period in our entire country, and when you look at a tax burden that's overwhelmingly a school budget, I think that a lot of people are sitting around and saying, what are we actually getting from this when there's any type of increase? So it's not that Canterbury is suffering
Right.
from a hyper-focused community disagreement. I think it's a microcosm of a larger conversation of, are our tax dollars serving our education?
Mr. Simon, I see your hand up, but I just want to ask a question, and maybe this is to Mr. Todd, but also to everybody. It looks like there's real concern from both sides, the minority and majority report, about the costs, about the details of this, and about the potential negative impacts of getting this passed. And I guess my general thinking is, and I haven't looked at the statute in a while, so maybe it's in there and I just don't recall it. But it feels like folks in town feel like they're on a conveyor belt and can't get off. So once you've started the process, you were saying this time around, people wanted the information to say, okay, would it actually cost? What are our options? And now you've got this report that says, hey, the costs are way bigger than we imagined. And there's a couple $1 million of vague, cloudy, we don't know what that's going to be. But the process is moving us forward, right? So we had to put this study in by November 1st, it comes to the board, and now we're on this crazy train, and we can't stop it. That's what it feels like, and maybe I've got that wrong.
I think you're right.
What are our options here? Like, was anybody in the majority here? It's a 5-2 vote, but really a 5-4 breakdown. Again, maybe this is in the statute and I just don't recall it. Didn't the majority just say, hey, you know what? This is not what we wanted. let's pull this thing, let's stop this.
There's nothing in there that says that you can, like, I don't know.
Once it gets started, it just keeps going.
And so
It
that's what
comes
we've
to
been
us.
doing, we've been following the timeline and the process
Yeah.
that's laid out in the RSA.
Because I kind of hear between the lines that we are the last lever to derail this before it hits a cliff on a Looney Tunes cartoon train ride,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of what I'm gathering here. You know, and maybe that's way off base, but that's just the vibe I'm getting.
And then, but can I just,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
of the vibe I get is that the committee voted for this because they
Yeah.
felt like, look, in order to get the information, we have to show a degree of commitment to this process, otherwise we can't actually fill in the rest of the numbers. And so they're like, okay, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, we're not ready, but if I don't do this, then I can't move anything forward a little bit. So there's kind of both sides of that, really.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
this.
Some of the districts had responded asking if we were serious.
This is what I mean,
yeah.
right, exactly.
So I don't think a lot of people get this far, it's my understanding. So it was tricky. It's hard to navigate. The other issue is, like, we don't know how far we can go. Like, it's entities that don't exist yet. Like, that asked to Belmont, they can't tell us if they would accept Be Our Anchor School. That's not up to the current school board to
Right.
decide. So it's a very tricky process.
And I also want to just kind of clarify from your point of view, from the community's point of view, from each majority minority report. If this gets approved and goes through today to the voters, got 8 weeks, is it your conception of this? Would it be the voters' conception of this? Necessarily speculate as you can. That what's being voted on is the question of whether to withdraw or not. And that the numbers are a guide to say, this is the best that we can get on figuring out what it might cost. It might cost something totally different because we have no contracts, we weren't able to get a lot of information. So this is your guideline to what we think it'll cost and how it might look. But the question is to stay or go. Or do you think the conception is, this is the plan? And it's not just a yes or no whether to withdraw, it is withdraw and we will move forward with whatever financial planning we have here. And how do you conceive of it, or how do you think people conceive of it?
I think they think this is the plan. I think that they believe that if it gets approved here today, that it is, stamped, that this is a good plan, and that this is what it is. And that's one of the reasons that I made the range and the minority so big, because you don't know. Like, I did worst case scenario,
Yeah.
and then I added a little extra. Because the ones that have done this before, it's cost more than they thought it would. And I did not want to go into this with people thinking that the range that's in the majority report is what it is. Like, it could be a lot more, and I don't think people understand that.
I just want to point out, 19529 regarding the voter withdrawal sets forth the specific language of the warrant article, also sets forth how the board then is supposed to publish the withdrawal plan in the newspaper so that the voters have an opportunity to see just what has been submitted.
So they are, under the way the law looks at it, they would be voting on a plan, not just, hey, it's yes or no, and then we'll figure it out later.
So the warrant
no, they have to publish the
specifically
plan.
is
No, I know that.
supposed
I know they have
to
to
be
post it,
essentially the
but-
following form. Shall the school district accept the provisions of
Oh,
RSA
no, I-
195?
Yeah.
Did-
I know that's how the law conceives it. I was just kind of asking from their point of view, like, do
I
people
think they
seem to,
believe this is the plan.
do people seem to feel like this is the plan versus, hey, let's just vote and then, we'll settle this issue once and for all and walk away. It is a plan, and that's what we're really looking at. And I just want to make sure that's the understanding.
Yeah, and I think another issue is the way that we've interpreted the RSA is whether you approve or disapprove it today, this committee ceases to exist after your decision.
Mm.
So for those next 8 weeks, who informs the town? Who continues carrying the torch to get that information for the voters? It's really difficult to take those next steps. So there's definitely some voids in it where it's, what do we do now? If you say yes, who's responsible for continuing the conversation with the superintendent's office? Where do we go from there? There's no guidance. There's guidance up to a point, and then it's
It's citizens. It's you as individual citizens making that argument, giving people the info, that's the way it's anticipated. I think.
But the issue is trying, as a citizen, to get that information, to walk into a neighboring school district and say, hey, what's it gonna cost me to take my kids, what's it gonna cost? That's where the difficulty is, without having a position of power or something to back you up, it's very difficult to continue these conversations. So that's where, as a majority, our report was mainly school choice based. We see this as an opportunity for school choice. I don't know if that's the best solution, to dissolve a school district with 2 towns is the best way to get something done. But that was the end goal of school choice. And I think the minority report, they echo, there's similar sentiments in that as well. I think both groups have an issue with the way that we have to achieve that or have to attain it. And it's very hard to sell to a very small town that sort of number with that gap in information, if that makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
So I think that's where our hiccups are.
So would you say that both the minority report and the majority report both advocate for school choice?
Go ahead,
Well, yeah, we talk about like how, we think it's not necessarily the tuition-based school choice, but that, it's not going away. We recognize that it's coming, it's gonna come big. We just think that there might be better ways to go about this, to try and meet these needs, that just education isn't there yet.
It's just a great financial burden on small towns. We're an older town.
Sure.
Yeah, we're getting more kids in town. That's the nature of, cycles. But it would be burdensome to vote out. I mean, yes, I support school choice and I'm on the majority report, but you're asking a lot of the town financially to just, for lack of better terms, grenade a school district. You're putting both towns in very dire straits.
What do you mean by when you say who's your?
Well, us in Belmont.
No, but you
the
said
board-
you're
you guys-
asking us to, this is the law.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you as the board, you're making the decision,
But
yes or no.
we're here making the decision because you made a decision, right? The statute says if the committee finds that the withdrawal of one or more towns from the cooperative district is recommended, the committee shall develop a withdrawal plan. Doesn't say if you think school choice is awesome, it says if you want to grenade the cooperative, your words, which I like, by the way. If you want to grenade the cooperative district, then go forward, and you did.
It was just as in you guys are making the decision, we're presenting you our case.
Yeah.
It's ultimately, it's your decision, it's the reference to the
Well,
your.
Yeah, I don't know that it is this board. This board is basically saying, did you go through the process of the law, right? It's your decision in terms of how you're gonna act on that, just to be clear.
Right, but it's my understanding, you review the reports and wouldn't you be making a
So,
decision?
but this board is responsible for under 195-26 to say, have you created a plan that addresses these enumerated 7 points? Have you addressed all the required things? That's all that this board can be considered.
Yeah, I guess the question I'm stuck with is it sounds like what I'm hearing is actually even the majority doesn't think that withdrawing of one or more towns from the cooperative district is recommended. And if that's the case, you can stop the process at any time by just saying, we actually don't recommend withdrawing from the cooperative school district. But if you go forward, your report meets the requirements of the RSA, and I'm gonna vote yes.
Yeah, and that's where I think the statute, that's where we are, is the majority, you guys voted 5-2 to this thing. That means you recommend withdrawal. That's what it means. So that's why we're here. If nobody wants to withdraw, should have been a different vote, but, I'm hearing some reluctance to actually recommend withdrawal at this point. Do you have a question?
Just hold the question.
All right, because what we have is a recommendation from the majority board to withdraw from the school district. That's what's on our agenda. And that's why I think we were asking all kinds of questions about how you conceive of this and understand that.
This is very different than we've had this issue before. Most of the time, what we get when it comes to cooperative school districts is some smaller group who wants out and can't get out of an agreement that was made 60 years before they were born.
Yeah.
This is not that. And so, but the recommendation from the reports is what we have. They, in my opinion, they meet the requirements, and so my inclination of this is, you know, I don't know your town, I don't know your people, and you went through the process of creating this report, which was no small effort. And as long as it satisfies the requirements of the RSA, I'm always happy to kick it to voters, because I think, you know, democracy.
So I have a question, does it satisfy the requirements of the RSA? It's a hypothetical plan. The plan is to withdraw from a district, ask one that doesn't exist yet
Mhm.
to take us in. They could say no, and then what happens?
Well,
It's my
look,
understanding.
That's always
That's
better.
that the RSA is, do you meet these X, Y, and Z? And I don't think it's anticipated that you have every penny accounted for in a plan.
That seems like a big piece of the plan.
It is a big piece of the plan, but,
It's
you
not
know,
a
we're dealing
requirement.
with, it is a plan. You know, you guys,
I think if the rule was, we have to know dollar and cent, and any change from that, you know, someone's gonna sue you or have a lawsuit, then no plan, whatever, it would defeat the purpose of having the law. I mean, we look for a good faith effort, and that you have put some thought into it, and that you have a general idea how this thing is gonna go down. We understand that, you know, costs change, and by the time you get through the warrant article process and get through the, you know, the conversations about debt and these other different things, lots of things could change. Interest rates could change, the cost of contracts could change, but
Just as a hypothetical, what if no district would take our kids in right now? What happens if you dissolve a school district and there is nobody who will take you in?
Well, the
What happens
resident
then?
district the resident town is responsible.
you
for
have that in
education
your
of
plan,
those
right?
students, right?
They're going to Belmont, that's where it is. At, I think, a much higher cost than you're paying now. I mean, that's the plan.
If they say yes.
Right.
Right, if the voters were to say yes and no other district takes you in, you will be tuitioning to Belmont at much higher cost than you're.
I meant if Belmont says yes.
That's what I'm saying, if Belmont says yes and no other district does, then you just withdrawn from a district and gotten back into it at a much higher cost.
So the question I have is for the board, we put this report, we went through this process and we took a vote and we have a majority and minority report. And now we're before you, and I have a question. Do you think this is a reasonable thing to do? Does it make sense?
What? Does what make sense?
We don't have to.
Because it's not
We
for
don't have to
us.
agree with your plan, we
It's not
just
for
have
us
to
to
say
say
that
it.
it meets the statutory requirements.
I'm not asking you to
Yeah.
agree, I'm
So-
asking you, does it make sense?
I think in a democratic institution that one party has a problem with another, and there's a process for that party to put forward a case, which they've done in a legal fashion, absolutely, I think it's appropriate. That's what democracy is all about. That's what we're here to do. If it was the other way, then minority parties would never have an opportunity to remove themselves from majority or have any type of control over themselves. So on the face of the question of the democratic process of a minority appealing to a majority, then absolutely, it's appropriate. That's the reason why it's in statute. That's what this all is about.
I also don't think it's appropriate for us to weigh in on
No,
something that's
we're
gonna
not here
go
to
to the
edit.
ballot, you know, I don't wanna be on a soundbite in Canterbury
No.
saying this plan sucks, so.
We're not
And
here
look,
to.
it's hard because like none of us work in education. We volunteered here. We don't know if it's a good idea.
I think that from what I'm hearing, there's a big misconception maybe that you've now learned today that maybe we were to play referee, when in fact all we're doing is checking a ticket like you're on a train. Do you have the correct seat? Are you sitting in the right location? We don't know where you're going, what you're doing after you get off the train. All our responsibility is here today is to look at the RSA, which we've done. Do you meet the requirements of the RSA, which you have? Punch your ticket and allow you to move on forward. That's the role of us here today.
I do think the statute does anticipate that we have some judgment in these things. There is some subjectivity written into the statute with our role here. And we have avoided, as Rich said, making pronouncements on whether a plan is good or bad. We don't want to put our thumb on the scale of for the voters. I think that's something we try to avoid. But I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as if you check all the boxes, you're automatically through, because the statute does not actually say that. So I think it does give us some level of subjectivity here when looking at these plans. It's vague, it's not clear, you know, but I think there is some level of, do we think this is a workable plan or not? I think that's fair, and so Phil, do you have anything to add? I think I'm ready to call a question if nobody has any more questions.
No, I think Rich answered after Brian spoke, so thank you.
Does anybody have any discussion or motion? I just have to say, I am very much aligned with Rich and Ryan in my general approach to these sorts of things. You bring us a withdrawal plan and you're advocating, we have a minority that wants to do it. If you've checked all the boxes, I am generally happy to let you go to the voters. I think there's something else going on here. I don't sense that this is a very passionate majority, and I think there's some sense of inevitability about this thing moving forward without people fully kind of understanding or wanting it to get to this point.
Could you share with us how the other members who voted in the affirmative look at this? The same way you do, or differently?
The yes vote with the common consensus in talking with the members after was to seek more information, to use it as a method to get more finite information in that short window we had from the vote to the report. And we put the best effort we could. We reached out and we didn't get in return what we thought we could achieve. So yes, we voted in the majority, but the context of it was for information seeking. The simple fact of the matter is schools, people didn't want to talk to us about intent. They didn't want to give us, they could give us the ballpark field, but they couldn't give us second base. We were looking for second base. And we thought with the intention of supporting it and showing intent, schools would be more apt to communicate with us in a more finite manner. And it ultimately didn't come to fruition. So
Gotcha.
that's sort of where the
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah,
and the truth is, we've all discussed it, we're all friends, nobody's here
Yeah.
right,
Carpool.
wrong, indifferent. So the reality is, the town is very divided. This has caused a lot of turmoil in town. There's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of he said, she said. The reality is, at the end of the day, we all want what's best for the town's kids, whether it's my kids, her son, his grandkids, we all want what's best. Nobody wants to financially burden the town. Nobody wants to not give kids opportunities to thrive. That was the intent behind the vote to withdraw, was to garner more information, hopefully check more boxes.
Gotcha.
We could only check so many, and that was the difficulty behind it.
I hear you, and hearing that multiple times, I think we should go, if the majority's real intent here was to gather more information and take this as far as they could in terms of gathering info and figuring out what things would look like, I am not hearing a hearty recommendation to withdraw from the majority, and that is something, in my experience, since I've been on board, we've never had. We have majorities who really are passionate about withdrawing, and we have butting heads, and we have, you're keeping our kids down and all this stuff, and I'm just not hearing that, and I get a sense that this is not, that actually withdrawing here is not what the majority's long-term goal is.
So I think that part of the problem is also we don't know how to go backwards.
Right.
We're just following what we believe we are legally obligated to do.
Exactly. And so you're in a Looney Tunes cartoon, you guys are Wile E. Coyote, and you're pulling that train, and you can't stop it. That's what I hear. Anybody else? Motion?
I guess my question is, can we just table and they go back to their committee and see if they want to
Reconsideration.
Can you
Reconsider the vote.
Can we send it back and say, do you really want to reconsider your vote here?
I
Because
don't-
take back what you've learned today? Because if we table it, take it back to the committee, that what you've learned today, and you say, you guys sure you want to blow this cooperative school district up, or did we get what we want out of this, and we'll just change our vote and we're done?
Do we have the ability to do that?
I mean, you,
I won't second.
what do you think, Liz? Because you would have, so that would be coming back to our January 12th meeting, which would give you obviously even less time if this thing gets approved, but if we have, because what I'm not hearing is, what we have on paper is a recommendation to withdraw. What we have orally is not a recommendation to withdraw very strongly. So that gives me real pause to move forward with this. And maybe there's clearly cold feet. So
We just wanna put the best information we can put forward.
I hear you, I think that's admirable, you know, but I don't wanna I don't wanna throw the grenade in your district, when you don't want to. I know that's up to the voters, but we're just, so what do you think, Liz, can we table this and ask them can they reconsider their vote? You think?
I'm sorry, can we go into non-public to get
Yeah, you
legal
want-
advice? I don't wanna make
Yeah,
Liz
sure,
on the
sure.
record.
Well, the problem is we have to do that later because we have a public hearing that we have to do right now. So, unless we wanna just vote now,
I'm just struggling grasping with the concept of what we're doing here because
hold them over.
Yeah,
Here, and then I can.
responsible
Give
adults
Liz a
got
chance
together
to
and
take a
moved
look
forward
at
with
this.
an action, and now this is the result of said action. So at the
I'm
end of
just-
the day, us kind of kicking it around is, it seems to, it puts me in a rough position because I'm hearing what Drew is saying for the nature of what we're hearing here today. But in the same token, it almost gives the message of using this body as a way to force conversations that aren't happening. And I go back to the local level thing where one party started an action, we are in result of that action.
So,
I'm struggling to
When-
help,
Yeah.
I'm struggling to kind
so
of wade
let-
in on
let
this.
me try. So when the vote was done, they did it with the intent of trying to get more concrete information, which they'd gone to other schools and specifically around SAU administration costs.
Sure.
So they have not gotten what they need. I think the problem is we submitted the reports, we went by the deadlines, we didn't think we could have conversations or reconsider. Like there's nothing that said, like I said, we don't know how to go backwards. So
Right.
we get here and we know it says you have to approve.
I mean, we have to start a public hearing, but I mean, if the board wanted to vote, I'm happy to vote and just do it. I don't know that,
Or if you guys hold and give
or
Liz
if
a
you
little bit
rather,
of time.
if you rather give Liz some time and wait till after, I mean, that
You guys
drags
can
you guys
hold
out.
for an hour or two.
You might have to wait an hour or more.
I'm happy to wait.
Okay. All right, so
Sorry.
why don't we just, we gotta do a public hearing, we'll ask you guys to step aside, we're not gonna have a vote at the moment, we gotta do our public hearings, if you don't mind waiting, we'll just,
Thank you.
see what our options are.
The plan meets the statutory process as far as I'm concerned, and so, because the plan meets the statutory process, I am making a motion to approve the plan to withdraw from the cooperative school district.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, second by Ryan. I'm gonna throw my discussion in and say, I do think we have discretion here and we don't have to approve it just because it meets the rules if we have concerns and questions about it. From what I heard, we do not have a majority that is enthusiastically urging us to approve this. I think there's some misunderstanding in the majority's point along the way that they felt like they had to stay on this train and had to go through this process. Normally, I'd be totally with Rich on, are you guys bringing something, knock yourselves out. I don't think they really want to go through with this withdrawal. If we had a strong majority saying, oh, yeah, we want this is exactly what we had planned, please pass this, that would make this different, but that's not the presentation we got, and so I would be inclined to vote against it, that's mine.
If this is approved today by the board, motion's approved, do they have to put it on the warrant article?
It moves forward and goes on the ballot. Yeah. And anything can happen in an election. It's a small town, small turnout, who knows? So, yeah, so I don't want to belabor the discussion. I think we discussed it a lot, but my inclination is a no, although I'd be normally inclined to vote yes when they come forward, this kind of stuff. Any other discussion? Phil, you have anything?
No, I'm torn too. I don't want to hold Rich up because it's not going to change my vote. If it's fine.
All right, so all in favor of recommending
Accepting the plan to withdraw from the co-op.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No. Oh, aye. Sorry, I meant aye.
Okay, all right, so it fails.
Which, where was?
You were not, you were opposed, right?
Okay, because I was.
Yeah.
Are you sure, Phil, you were a no, right?
No on the motion?
Sorry, the motion was to approve the withdrawal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm a nay on that.
Okay,
Just
all right,
making sure.
all right, 2 to 3, motion fails, all right.
Thank
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.